Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Unlocking the Next Phase of Savings from Your Company Car Scheme. Thank you for joining us today. As many organisations now have established company car and salary sacrifice schemes, the question has become, how do you optimise these programmes for even greater savings and wider business impact? Fleetworld and the Charge Scheme have collaborated on this session to explore exactly that. Today's discussion will look at strategies for enhancing employee engagement, aligning with ESG goals and resolving charging access challenges so that your EV programs can deliver maximum ROI for both your employees and your business. We will explore how the latest salary sacrifice charging solutions and network innovations can help you unlock new savings while keeping your drivers happy. At this point, I'll briefly introduce our speakers. We are pleased to welcome Tom Alon, founder of the Charge Scheme and the Electric Car Scheme, and Tom Rowlands, Managing Director of Global EV Solutions at Corpay. Both bring deep industry insight into how EV charging can be optimized for fleet operations. Tom Alon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, Haley. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I started the Electric Car Scheme in 2020. The main reason was I was looking for a car and would like to get the cheapest car on the market with all the tax saving salary sacrifice offers, and that was quite difficult to do both of those at the same time. So we started the Electric Car Scheme that searches for the cheapest leases available and then sets up salary sacrifice schemes for employers. We now have about 2,000 employers using that, and last year wanted to do more and therefore launched the Charge Scheme, which I'm sure we'll talk a bunch more about today.
Fantastic, thank you. And Tom Rowlands, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, great to be here. So I'm Tom Rowlands, so I'm the MD of Global EV Charging at Corpay. So I look after both the fleet side of our business, which is in the UK, our All-Star business, and I also run the plug surfing business, which provides an EV network to many players, including the Electric Car Scheme, but also OEMs and also our fleets. So great to be here.
So Tommy, let's start with you. From your perspective, what's the biggest challenge UK fleets face when it comes to EV charging costs, and how does the Charge Scheme aim to address that?
Yeah, so I think for the majority of drivers, if we broaden it all the way out to drivers and therefore into fleets, it's affordability. So salary sacrifice fleets are there to make it more affordable and simpler for people, everyday families, people in work to get into an electric vehicle, and they make it significantly cheaper because you save through your salary before tax, and that drives a lot of engagement. But then if you're able to make it even more affordable by doing everything you can, so for instance, sourcing used cars to put through salary sacrifice, or in this case, making charging cheaper, then it drives more people to consider getting into an EV and more broad use of salary sacrifice and fleets. And that's a specific part of fleets, I guess, in general, but that's the part we look at.
And Tom, from All-Star's vantage point, how do you see these challenges reflected across your 50,000 business customers?
So I definitely agree with Tom regarding the affordability piece and the total cost of ownership, which I think we'll probably talk about a bit later. But I also think from my perspective, what I see as a big challenge is also the complexity, or at least the perceived complexity in terms of managing all different charging types, locations, cost deltas. It can be quite overwhelming, both for the fleet manager and also for the driver. So I think that perceived and also real complexity that EV charging brings versus traditional ICE fueling is definitely a challenge that fleets need to overcome, and we see that reflected all the time across our fleet base. So I think a big element of that from our perspective is education, doing things like this, talking about the solutions that are out there, but also driver advocacy of drivers who have made it work and not had a complete disaster when they've moved into an EV. I think is also really important.
Okay, great. So let's look at salary sacrifice and public charging now. Tom E, the Charge Scheme enables savings of up to 50% on charging through salary sacrifice. Could you explain how this works in practice, especially for employees without home charges?
Sure. So car salary sacrifice has been around for a long time, I think, from the late 90s, where an employer effectively pays for the car, provides it as a benefit in exchange for the employee reducing their salary. And that's become pretty mainstream and has been a big vehicle to drive usage and adoption of EVs. And I guess a relatively new innovation in the market is being able to include charging that company car, that electric vehicle, in salary sacrifice as well. So uh, effectively making very similar savings on all the energy, the juice going into the car, as well as the car itself. And that's extremely helpful for those people who have to pay very high rates of public charge costs, who probably don't have a home charge point. For this group of people, the public charging is about 5 times more expensive than charging at home. And if you're in a flat or for whatever reason can't get a home charge point access, then you're kind of stuck, and it puts a load of people off because it's really expensive. It's more expensive than petrol, and suddenly, you know, it becomes not obvious and a trade-off. And as soon as you're in the world of trade-offs, people need to think too much, first of all, and push it to next year or maybe never if they're going to have to think about it. So making public charging as cheap as possible is going to help the transition. How does it work? Effectively, everyone in the company car, in our case, salary sacrifice, will get a card like this. Tom will recognize this card because Allstar is a service provider for us. Sorry, the background flicks it out. And they can publicly charge on that network. It's a very large network. Tom will talk about that. And all that charging can effectively be paid out of gross salary before tax. So then you can save your income tax, your national insurance on that cost. So that brings the high cost of public charging down. Now should end up at least in line with petrol and diesel on a per mile basis, probably cheaper. And for someone who publicly charges, that's probably about £1,000 a year on average, is what we're seeing in extra savings. So it's really meaningful. It's a meaningful enough number to say, right, I'll think about getting an EV. And obviously it's a meaningful enough number for an employer or a fleet manager to think, right, this is going to help the business goals in supporting employees, giving them effectively extra savings through cost of living crisis, and helping people decide to move into the EV transition.
So, Tom, off the back of that, Allstar's network now covers over 70,000 public chargers in the UK, with 83% of those being fast or rapid. This obviously makes it one of the widest public charging networks in the country. So how critical is that scale for fleets?
Yeah, I think it's been really critical to get to this point where we have a large enough network with high enough quality chargers so that people no longer have range anxiety. I genuinely don't believe range anxiety is a thing anymore in EV. You definitely hear it less, whereas it used to be a couple of years ago really flagged as one of the big blockers for people getting into an EV, particularly in the fleet space, where they would be worried about not being able to get access to a charger should they need to. So I think it's definitely reduced that barrier, and I think the conversation has now changed or pivoted from size of a network to kind of more strategic conversations around new kinds of models. So depot charging and kind of semi-public charging, near home charging, more things around on-street charging and overnight tariffs and things like that open up cheaper or different alternatives to people, to Tom's point, who maybe don't have access to a home charger, for example. So being able to get a decent price on an overnight tariff on a lamppost charger becomes very important to that particular individual. So I think that the size and the scale of the network is great because it's removed many of those barriers, and I think it's now about how do we segment that large network and make it relevant to the different user types that we have, because not everyone needs access to rapid motorway charging. Some people just need access to kind of more local charging. So I think it's about kind of getting down into that level of nuance with the individuals and with the tools that we have. For example, using our route planner in the app enables people to plan where it is that they may want to charge based on speed, based on price, based on location, based on reliability, kind of all of those types of things. So the conversation is definitely getting way more nuanced, whereas previously it used to be about how big's your network.
And All-Star Home Charge automates home charging payments directly to energy suppliers. So how does this reduce admin for fleet directors and payroll teams?
So yeah, I mean, having the public network is great, and many people rely on the public network, but as Tom said, that's not the cheapest place to charge. So we figured out, I guess, early on that home charging would become a huge element of a fleet's overall charging, which is why we acquired a business called Mina about 2 years ago, which is now fully integrated into the All-Star offering. What that allows us to do is to integrate with a fleet driver's home charger, understand the tariff that they're on, understand the kilowatt hours that they're pulling every month. And we're also then integrated on the utility side, so that we can pay that utility supplier for the kilowatt hours that individual charges. So the individual is able to charge their work vehicle and never have an increase in their bill at home, and we deal with everything in the background. I think that's been a huge enabler for many of our fleets. And one of the first things our fleets do is they survey the base of their drivers to understand who's able to charge at home. And clearly those are the first people who kind of move into an EV due to, one, the price, but also the operational upside. So your van goes out or your car goes out fully charged in the morning. You don't have to start by finding a public charger and then charging up. And the combination of the network that we just spoke about and this ability to charge at home gives real confidence to fleet managers to put people into EVs, because they go out full, they can top up on the road, and the blended rate of the charging costs is much more reasonable and more comparable to ICE fueling.
And Tommy, how does a charge scheme integrate with home charging solutions to make salary sacrifice charging simple for fleet teams and drivers?
Yeah. So we mentioned salary sacrifice, and we called out public charging being a core proposition. Now you can also get the home charge cost salary sacrifice benefits as well, and that's included in the charge scheme. And I think that's important because the majority of charging today going into EVs is through the home, because that's the group that are engaged already. So they should also get this benefit. So with the charge scheme, we take a measurement of home charge cost through effectively mileage submissions. So it's a different way of calculating the charge coming from the home. It's a tax compliant estimate rather than a measurement. So it's a different way of doing it, and it's an estimate because this is about savings of private mileage, really, for salary sacrifice, because salary sacrifice cars are generally for private use, and the key is to get the estimate right. I think where home charge comes into its own is where there's a for work vehicle that is being charged at home for work purposes, and that needs to be measured to the kilowatt hour and paid before it touches the worker's pocket. And so these are effectively two ways of doing something quite similar, but equally as important, because it's so much cheaper to do at home. Is great. So I mentioned someone just publicly charging should be saving about £1,000 a year by salary sacrifice. The equivalent amount of home charging is about £300 a year. So if you're only home charging and you've got a salary sacrifice car, you can add the charge scheme and save an extra £300 a year, which is a very nice benefit to have.
And fleet directors always ask, what is the business case? Beyond employee savings, what ROI and benefits does a charge scheme deliver to employers?
Yeah, I guess when we talk to fleet directors, they're interested in a few things. One, a lot of them do care about employee savings and the benefits, and especially as they bring in their HR colleagues, which generally this will sit with as a benefit. They are concerned that when some of these business cars are being used for business mileage, that they can reimburse employees appropriately for the real cost of business mileage, because historically that's been underfunded or under-recognized, leading to pretty upset employees, effectively subsidizing business travel, and weird behaviors like queuing for ages to get the cheapest possible charging. So the charge scheme also provides the accurate real cost of mileage, which can be used for business mileage reimbursement. The other thing they talk about a lot is generally they're going through a transition program, whether that's from fuel to EV or whether it's from grey fleet to company cars, and they want to make that easy and beneficial for employees. Obviously having employee savings can make that work well. The final point is for large fleets, there can also be employer financial savings, because there is employer national insurance that can be saved through salary sacrifice. So that's another lever that actually this can save the business money to fund other projects as well.
And Tom, what's Allstar's perspective on building the business case for investment in charging? How are you helping companies manage their fleets during the transition to electric?
Yeah, so look, just quickly on Tom's point, I think the other thing is also employee expectations. So I think in some areas of life, employees are expecting more and more from their employers, and I think things like the salary sacrifice on EVs and the charge scheme will become more and more kind of expected from an employer to offer these kind of things. Many younger people certainly don't want to be driving ICE vehicles, and probably don't even want to be driving hybrid vehicles. So I also think it's becoming a more attractive employer as well, which I think is quite a good benefit for many of those companies as well. From our perspective on the business case side, when we speak to fleet managers and when we speak to fleets, inevitably it still always comes back to TCO, so total cost of ownership, which is just always the North Star metric that I guess I hear about. So the key thing from my perspective when looking at a business case is to kind of really get down into each individual vehicle and to follow the data. So we have a huge amount of data, which we'll talk about shortly. And the data can be surprising to both the driver and to the fleet manager. So kind of going in with an open mind and genuinely following the data. The amount of times that you ask someone, how long do you feel like, or how many miles do you do in the vehicle? I'm sure Tom sees this all the time. People always overestimate how many miles they do. I did it myself with my own lease, and you do less than you think, and therefore the vehicle is actually dwelling for a much longer period of time than you think as well. And when a vehicle is dwelling, it's possible to charge the vehicle as well. So really follow the data and look at each individual route if it's a fleet, or each individual driver if it's kind of more of a salary sacrifice piece. As ever, when building the business case, again, the first thing that we say to people, kind of back to the point we were just talking about, is see whether the person is able to charge at home. Because if the person is able to charge at home, the business case generally writes itself, given the lower cost of charging that we've already spoken about. And that helps with again, as I said, the operational downtime, which for fleets in the commercial space is certainly a factor when they're trying to build out a business case in terms of what those fleets are able to get done in a day. Other things to think about, I think, when people are going through the business case is what other options can they put in place that make the business case stronger. So installing workplace charging, depot charging, things like that can also reduce reliance on public charging for those people who are not necessarily able to charge at home. So we, for example, at Corpay in our Swindon office, we have chargers in our car park at work, and employees are able to access those chargers, which are inevitably cheaper than public charging as well. So I think there's a few things to think through, but again, at the end of the day, every conversation I come back to on a business case comes back to TCO.
So let's focus on reporting and data now off the back of that, and we'll stick with you, Tom, for this next one. All-Star offers use the data and route planning via tools like the Copilot app. How can both employees and fleet managers use this data to optimize charging patterns and budgets?
Yeah, so I guess I kind of alluded to it in the previous point, but this is, for me, a really a growing area of interest from our customers and also from drivers. So, as you mentioned, we have a route planner in our Copilot app and also in the in our white label apps, including the electric car scheme. That's powered by a company called ChargeTrip, and they do some really awesome stuff in the background in terms of algorithms to drive people to the best sites, in terms of price, in terms of how long you're going to need to be there, in terms of the power of that site. So I think we have relatively good tools built into the apps, which people will use without even realizing that they're using them. And there's obviously a huge amount of data powering that in the background. But we also produce the All-Star All Costs report, which is a pretty interesting report that we produce on a quarterly basis that shows the delta between different charging locations effectively. So, whether that's charging at home, whether that's charging at high-powered chargers on the road, but then also the public network itself is split between, ultra-rapid motorway sites, which are obviously more expensive, and then kind of lower powered, cheaper sites in different locations. So it's a complex world, EV charging, and I think you really need to, again, segment where it is that you're charging and then dive into the data to understand the costs that you'll incur depending on where it is that you as an individual driver are charging, or where you as a fleet manager are directing or driving your traffic to. And again, that when we get into really detailed fleet reporting, we don't just look at the pence per kilowatt hour. We also look at how long that driver has dwelled at a certain location, because it may be worth, from a fleet manager's perspective, them going to a more expensive motorway location, only being there for 20 minutes and being able to get away and go to a job, versus spending an hour and a half on a slower charger and having the operational downtime. So there's definitely complexities in it, and you need to kind of tailor your reporting depending on the kind of key metrics that the fleet is looking to achieve.
And Tommy, can you walk us through how the charge scheme supports fleet and payroll teams with reporting, specifically with regards to business versus personal mileage?
Yeah, nice. So as we talk to businesses to onboard the charge scheme, you've got to make sure that there's no reason that don't get blocked. Biggest reasons for getting blocked are don't have the budget and it's too much hassle. So one, there's never any cost to the business. We make sure that's the case from the beginning. And second, it has to be really easy to administer, which is not trivial because it's salary sacrifice. You're changing someone's salary. So I guess like a lot of salary sacrifice services, there's a monthly operation which provides the employer with the information to change payroll. And for majority of businesses we work with, they accept a fairly simple sheet delivered on the first of the month that goes to their payroll team or payroll external payroll administrator, and either it's a one-by-one job, probably like 1 minute per car, or it's a copy-paste job that they've already set up. But obviously for the larger fleets with thousands of cars, we'll do an integration into their payroll system or their HR system so that it's a no-touch solution, and we'll set that up from the outside. It's always a conversation that starts to make sure it's going to be simple. And I'd say once the first month is done, which we obviously kind of white glove concierge with the people on the front line doing it, then from the second month onwards, it should just be very, very easy.
So let's look at employee engagement now. Tom, we'll go to you for this one. How do charging benefits tie into engagement? Do they influence EV uptake and satisfaction among drivers?
Yeah, I think just to come back to probably my biggest learning working in this business is affordability drives engagement. As soon as you can present something more affordable, then more people get involved. So last year we launched used cars on our car scheme. I think it doubled the engagement of an employee base, and obviously that's a big deal. One, to get more people into EVs, but two, for benefits managers, they want as many people as possible to take benefits that they've worked hard to provide to staff. I think we're starting to see that with the charge scheme. It's early in its rollout. We have the first 1,000 people using it. But as it kind of fully integrates into the offering for cars, so people can see when they take a car, oh, there's a used Kia for 150 quid, and it's going to cost me 50 quid less than petrol a month. This is a full solution for effectively £100 a month, with car, with insurance, with charging, savings. That's, it's obvious why you get more people engaged. We'd like to do, well, we try and do that across the board, make the cars as cheap as possible, make the charging as cheap as possible. And that has to come with simplicity. That really drives the interest. And then the challenge becomes, right, how does it all bundle together? How does it look like it's a one-click solution? How does it arrive to the doorstep with people understanding what they've got, and how does it all roll through payroll? Very simply. But as long as you meet those two things, you get pretty high engagement levels. I think in general, when we go out to businesses, we get between a third and a half of the entire employee base looking at the benefit, doing quotes. And I think that will grow as people understand. You bring in, okay, this is making the full lifetime costs even more affordable, and that message coming through.
And while company car schemes have been great at driving the adoption of EVs, clearly charging is still a cost barrier to entry for many people. Perhaps you can walk us through the value for employees in monetary terms, and how much can they be expected to save, and what are the benefits for drivers?
Yeah, as I said, like the headline is, if you're only charging publicly, it's probably £1,000 a year saving. If you're only charging at home, it's probably £300 a year saving. And that's kind of rule of thumb. There's a nice little calculator on chargescheme.com. You can go in and play, and it does obviously completely depends on how much you're charging where, what car you've got, because different cars have very different efficiency levels of use of that energy. If you're in a Tesla, pretty good. If you're an Audi, pretty bad. Things like that, and how far you drive. So enter and your salary, which tells us, allows us to estimate your marginal tax rate and therefore your savings. So simple entry on those three things give you a clear saving. Yeah, that's the best way to get a view.
So let's take a look ahead now to the future. And Tom, I'll go to you for this one. Where do you see charging technology and fleet solutions heading in, say, the next 5 years? What are going to be the next sort of big innovations in this space?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's very hard to predict given how quickly the space is moving. I think one of the key things we're seeing with the OEM technology and the battery technology is ranges increasing significantly, right? So I got my vehicle, a BMW iX3, 4 years ago, and it has a range of about 220 miles, I would say, on a good day, and it obviously decreases in the winter and kind of all of those things we know about EVs. I think the new iX3 can do almost 450 miles, right? So that's a very short period of time where the range is almost doubled, and that would make a significant difference to me on the longest trip that I do, which is kind of from London to York, where I can just about get there in the summer, but on this new vehicle I would be able to kind of easily get there, whether it was summer or winter. So I think range is just going to massively increase, which will put things on kind of par with ICE vehicles, and kind of take away that whole conversation around range and all those kind of things that people use sometimes as a reason kind of not to take a vehicle. I think the other thing that we're starting to see is the Tesla experience. So which is effectively plug and charge on everything that is not Tesla. So the ability just to plug in the vehicle, you don't have to go and tap your card, you don't have to go into an app. The vehicle just has your payment method embedded within the EMSP, and it just deals with it. So that kind of simplicity. I don't think that's necessarily a game changer for everyone, but it just makes the whole experience easier and kind of nicer for everyone. So I think that's another one. And then one that for me is really important is the charging speed that's advertised at the CPO and the ability of the vehicle to charge at that speed, because we so often get people calling us up saying, oh, it says on your app that the CPU, the charger is 300 kilowatts, and I was only getting 160 or whatever. And obviously that's really to do with what the vehicle is able to do, not what the charger is able to output. But obviously then there's all sorts of things around, if there's 50 chargers and all 50 are full, then the chargers are not outputting the kind of the full amount. But we're going to get to a point where we have lots of 300 kilowatt hour chargers and 350 kilowatt chargers and even megawatt chargers kind of coming into the market. And what that's going to do as the OEM technology and the battery technology improves as well is massively decrease the amount of time that you actually have to be there to charge the vehicle. So you'll be kind of getting down into sub 10 minutes to go from 20% to 80%, which then becomes very much like a fueling experience, a traditional fueling experience. So you don't have to kind of hang around for 30 minutes and wait for your vehicle to charge, which I think will be relatively game changing in the sense that people will then be able to compare it directly to an ICE experience, and again kind of remove barriers. So I think those are really the main things in terms of the technology side. On the kind of OEM and vehicle cost side, I also think we're going to see a significant shift, and I think we're already seeing it in terms of cost coming down and being again way more comparable with ICE. That's partly being driven by huge advances and progress in Chinese brands entering Europe and the UK. So we're seeing them put pressure from a kind of commercial perspective onto traditional OEMs. So I think we'll definitely see the kind of cost of the vehicle come down, the ranges increase, the time to charge decrease, and everything just start to feel a little bit more like the kind of traditional ICE experience. But you obviously get a much nicer experience driving in an EV.
And what's next for the charge scheme, Tommy? How do you see your model evolving with wider EV adoption?
Yeah, I think everything that Tom said will just drive, affordability drives engagement, and then we'll get through the full EV transition as these things take effect. I guess what's relatively new in the market is you can get significant tax savings on charging the car. I think that won't change. I think that will be around for a while. Now, because it's new, it's not fully integrated into lots of other services that are available or need to be available. So I kind of see the things that the service level simplifying, consolidating, and the lives of fleet managers being made much easier because of that. So, fleet managers want to pay for business mileage. They want to reimburse business mileage appropriately with the right number. All personal mileage should be effectively have significant savings. And I can see a world where every company car comes with a card and it does exactly what the fleet manager wants it to do based on what type of car it is. Is it a for-work car? Is it a perk car? Is it a salary sacrifice car? Set the settings and off it goes. You're reimbursed for the business mileage. You're saving on all your personal mileage off the bat, and it's just out the box. I also think this will be made really nice and simple, I hope, using some of the car APIs, because you can get all the data you should need out of the car API. Tells you where it's gone, the efficiency, the mileage. I think the only thing we'll need is a distinction between, was that journey a full work journey or was it a private journey? And as long as that's the only simple input required, then everyone's life's pretty easy and everything will just flow off the back of that.
Perfect. Well, there's some really great insights from our speakers there. So thank you to both of you. I'd like to take the opportunity now to go to some of our audience questions. The first one I have here is for Tom E. How difficult is it to set up the charge scheme with an existing company car or salary sacrifice program?
Yeah, so we launched the charge scheme for our salary sacrifice program, the electric car scheme, and all of our clients get it off the bat. All cars delivered come with it. There's obviously also demand for companies with other car schemes, and they might well be comfortable and happy with their existing providers, but want to offer this as an additional benefit to their existing cars, either on the road or to be ordered from other providers. And it's absolutely available to do that. And it's actually quite simple to set up. So we've had a number of businesses already with 100 or so cars on fleet. We just need a bit of the data of what's on fleet, and then we can go out to those people in those cars with a one-click onboarding, and then they get the card in the post and off they go. So yeah, it can work independently from different provider of company car or salary sacrifice car, and be quite simple to onboard.
Okay, great. And the next question we have is, how does All-Star Home Charge handle situations where an employee's home energy tariff changes or they're on a variable tariff? So Tom, I think this one's for you.
Bit technical for me, but I'll do my best. So we have I can't remember what it's called now, but we do have a system that monitors in the background when people's tariff changes, because that's it's possible to have an API where we can see that, so it gets flagged to us if someone changes tariff or provider. When someone onboards with us, they give us their tariff information, and we use that tariff. If they're on a variable tariff, generally that's not a problem. We have integration with Kraken, which is the kind of octopus backend which many providers use to deliver variable tariffs. So we're kind of fully integrated with all of that, and we can deal with variable tariffs. And when people change tariff, they just update us, or we see it through our system and we reach out to say, we understand you've changed tariff. Can you please give us the detail on which tariff you've moved to?
Great. And Tom E, this one is for you. Our payroll team already has a heavy workload. How much admin is involved in managing the charge scheme, and does it add complexity?
Yeah, I empathize with the payroll teams. I still do payroll at my company, so but I can tell you from my experience, it's about a minute per car if you do it manually, which is the slowest way to do it. The other way to do it is to set up templates, so it's a copy and paste from the information we share, or to do allow us to do an integration, which we'll set up for free for the business. And I think that's probably appropriate when you get to 100 or so cars. Before that, it's book it in for a couple of hours on whenever you do payroll to add the benefit.
Okay, great. And Tom R, this one is for you. How do you ensure consistency of pricing across such a wide range of public charge points? And are there plans to expand All-Star coverage in rural areas where charging is still patchy?
Yeah, and I saw someone write in the chat a kind of question around whether we would have fixed price charging across the whole country as we do with fuel cards. So it's a challenge. As we've talked about, you can, even on the road, you have a huge spectrum of cost. You can kind of go all the way from 45p probably on an overnight tariff all the way up to almost 90p, or even 93 or 4p for rapid charging. So having a single fixed price is challenging. We do actually have a fixed price product, but even within that, we have to tier it because of the discrepancies. It's impossible to have just a single price that would be in any way fair, because otherwise you'd be massively overcharging someone or undercharging someone, depending on where they were charging. How that plays out over time, we will see, but I don't think charging will ever be as homogeneous as fuel, just given the disparity in terms of where you might charge and the speeds. So it's a challenge. We're trying to address it. We see it also in our German market where we have a fixed price product, which is difficult for us to administer. Also, in terms of our coverage, we're constantly in conversations with CPOs to increase our coverage, particularly in rural areas. To the point of this question, I think certain parts of the country have better infrastructure, generally in the south and southeast. And I think other parts of the country are getting more funding to improve charging in those areas. And where CPOs put charges, we will do our best to follow and to do deals with them and to agree it. So it's partly on us to do the integrations with the CPOs, which we're constantly doing, and it's also partly on the CPOs to invest in rural areas. And in defense of the CPOs, it's difficult, right? Because their business case has to stack up in terms of utilization and the sites actually being used in those rural areas. So there's kind of a little bit of a chicken and egg situation there, but the situation is constantly improving. My parents actually live in a relatively rural part of the world, and every time I go there, there's kind of new charges in the local area. So I think things are slowly improving.
The next question we have is, Scope 3 reporting is becoming a big focus for us. How exactly does offering charging as a benefit support that? So Tom E, I'll pass that one to you.
Sure. So businesses that review their emissions will do an assessment and audit, and part of that will be Scope 3. So this is emissions not caused directly from running the business, but from having a business, as it were, having employees, etc. A category of that is employee commuting that needs to be assessed. And obviously, if you can help people into electric cars, then that's going to radically reduce that category of Scope 3 emissions and probably be helpful for that whole exercise, and as well help engage a broader group of your business who are looking at all sorts of green initiatives, and this can be one in their portfolio.
And the next question, Tom R, I'll pass this one to you. What role do you see All-Star playing in helping fleets transition to EVs by 2030 in the coming years?
Yeah, so I mean, our mission here is to kind of build, for now, the best mixed fleet solution in the market. So that's fuel, that's EV, that's home charging, that's workplace, kind of covering all of those areas. So we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to try and help fleets transition at the pace that they need to transition, because not all fleets can transition as quickly, and some are very, very well progressed and doing really well, and some are not yet on the journey, and they kind of need to get on the journey, and we need to help them to get there. So in that way, we're trying to help fleets get there, but also I think partnering with people like Tom, who've kind of created a really interesting vision for how other segments that are not necessarily being addressed can also be accelerated, right, through innovative things like the electric car scheme and the charge scheme. So being the kind of network in the background, and not necessarily being front and center, we're also kind of doing that through our plug surfing business and our plug surfing network. So we're happy to kind of play both roles, where we're really driving forward with our own direct products, but also partnering with people who have a different skill set, a different niche, and are able to kind of get access to different segments of drivers that we wouldn't necessarily be able to help on the transition.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much to our speakers for their time. I hope you've all found the discussion useful. It will also be on demand once we finish the session. So thank you again to our speakers, Tom Elon and Tom Rowlands, also to our sponsor, the Charge Scheme, for partnering with us to make this webinar possible. So thank you all for watching. I hope you do join us again soon.
Bye. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.